Oseo.
Oseo.
That's a Cherokee greeting. Konbawa. That's a Japanese greeting for this early evening. I'm going to start off with a reading of poetry from a Chinese woman poet. And it's from this book that's been translated by Kenneth Rexroth. And some of you know who he is. He would be the master of culture in San Francisco in the 50s and 60s, and he organized the famous Beat Poet event. It wasn't called Beats at the time, but it became the Beat Poets that debuted Allen Ginsberg at that time, and also Gary Snyder and Michael McClure and Jack Kerouac, some of the notables that were there. Anyway, this to say that's who Kenneth Rexroth is, and this collection of women poets of China is from his translations. And what I'm going to start off reading is modern, and it's by Lan Ling. And when I was in the Philippines at that time, she was 12 years old. She's Chinese who was born in the Philippines. So I kind of like the connection there. She's titled this poem Melody, but actually I see that it's the heron. So you'll see that here. Wind shakes the grass, its upright posture bends apart. A voice awakens. It encircles the reeds and flows along two banks of the stream. A reflection on the water. Suddenly, a splash. The shadow of a face darts like light on stone. Leaning against the wind on a stout branch he stands. Grass withers between his brows. Stars fall into the river. And he, who has never worn shoes, is resting on the forehead of your every morning. After all, feathers do not decay, but return to the earth. Now my main theme here is still I'm continuing from Asian heritage. I owe much to Asian heritage, and so I enjoy doing these presentations. The main event here is this scroll, Kakimono, which you can see right away has a bird, and this bird is a heron, a night heron. And this scroll itself is an important document. I have this certificate from Tokyo that assures that this piece is important cultural property. So there. Now we're going to put a Zen light on these things here. All of you, of course, know William Shakespeare, and let's give the time of his life was from 1534 to 1616. And in Japan, this period is called Momoyama. And that is the era of the things here in my display here. And the painting here, this scroll, is by Unkoko Toeke. And his date is like from almost the same time as Shakespeare, like that. So that's the period, for all of this. And to know right away that all of the Chinese or Japanese paintings or calligraphy are always done horizontal. So the brush, has to be upright, or it's a slant, or it's held like this. So there's a whole way that speaks of every angle of the brush, the way that it is held. So all of these paintings are all horizontal before they are ever mounted and put up on the wall for viewing, so we can see all of that. And that all of the brush strokes here are a lineage. They all have their particular names. It's very similar to all the movements in the Tai Chi. And most of them also have the painter who authored this particular stroke. And in this painting by Unkoku, he has very much adhered to the ancient Chinese treatise on painting. So it is really a kind of a codified lineage of brush painting. Brush painting is a culture starting a long time ago. In China, Chan, later Zen in Japan, has various avenues, to its subject and to enlightenment and so forth. In Japan, it was pretty much focused on the brush paintings itself. It seems to be to also have somehow combined with the Chinese Tao. The way of the Tao is very much like the way of Zen in painting here. So to give some ideas, here of the painting itself. Well, first of all, we do see that this is a bird, and this is a heron. That is Goisagi, is the name of the night heron. And the composition here, from the Chinese treatise, this branch that goes up and across the picture plane is a constellation. The constellation Beitiao means Ursa Major. And then we have this very heavy, thick, downward branch, which is dominating the composition. And it is balanced. It's balanced by this upright branch, and this is the spirit branch, Qi Tiao. So it's a spirit branch. And also there is no leaves on this branch. So it is saying this is lofty dryness. This is an ancient spirit by way of the branch. And all of this thick, heavy branch here is going to be deep reserve, deep reverberation, like that. And the way that it has been painted, it's using the brush that's called axe strokes. And so Nkoko has attempted to date the period that he is painting this in with the axe stroke in the 11th century. And that was first used by Li Liang in China. So that's one way that we are saying it. There are lines, under this. These lines don't belong in the composition. Sometimes somebody has added them, but they're irrelevant, because all of this is actually to speak of the Zen emptiness. And to think of the bird here, the prompt from ancient China, Qi Feng Shi, is a kind of a verse, when the water clears, fishes. When the water clears, then fishes appear, which is saying when the delusion, the mud of delusion, disappears, then the fish appear, and the heron strikes his glittering prey, which is to be a symbol of the sudden enlightenment of Zen. And in the bird itself, these dots here are called moss dots, tian dai. And then the strokes here that would be the feathers was dry brush. So all of these, have names and who authored them. It's also called boneless because there is no calligraphy strokes used in this. So this bonelessness is very careful. I mean, the brush is loaded with ink so that it's heavy but not pointed. Other people painting this subject will take advantage of these things and make them very sharp, like that. Nkoko didn't do that in this case. So we do have all this area here that is this deep reverberation of bottomless depth, is the way that all of this is talking about it. the strokes up here with this branch is called Moroga. Moroga means apparition painting. Apparition painting. So that it's like, it's also called like ghost painting. So all of this is to reveal the roji, is the ground. In all of these kind of paintings, these Zen paintings, you see the large empty ground. It can serve as, boundless sky or water or mist. Here basically it means the ground of being, the ground of the mind, so that these things appear which go with this kind of subject altogether. We have a very good idea here for this subject and this scroll to show you that it is a culture, and this culture was still intact in the 16th century. It's likely, you see the size of this, that it was made as a triptych probably for a Zen temple. Usually in Zen temple they have these three up here. Maybe in the center it might have been Buddha, or it might have been Kuan Yin, or Bodhidharma, most likely Bodhidharma. And on the other side, the other one, may have been a sparrow and a bamboo. This would probably be what it goes for in that way. Now the other things that I have here are pottery. Now this pottery is also of this period. First of all, this is a tea bowl, and this tea bowl's name is Oribe. Oribe is actually named after, at the time, the tea master Furuta Oribe. He certainly was a designer. He was also a general in the military. The military is still in total control of the country at this time. And he was a designer. He was the pupil of Sendo Ryukyu, who was medieval. So what was new at this time, for one, is these designs on the sides of the pottery. Never before in Japan is there designs on pottery. In China, yeah, but in Japan this was brand new. Also, the shape of the tea bowl, which is called clog shape, shaped like a shoe. This is also very new. And the other thing is very new was the Koreans that they brought into the country had a new kind of kiln, a kind of climbing kiln. So things could be fired much hotter than that they had ever been fired before in Japan. So that allowed them to fire this copper green. So you can see that there. And down below is another Oribe piece that this would be a food bowl. These things were mostly designed not for peasants, but for the connoisseurs of the tea ceremony, which was very elaborate and had food dishes and things like that. So that is an example. Again, this is from the end of the 16th and the 17th century. We'll just say around 1600 is when these are. And this here, we usually call this a tikari chairi. And there's a painting of a pine tree on it. This is also from this time. The name Oribe was not being used at that time. It's actually the kilns of Mino. So the Mino kilns, fired these specialties, and that's why this one is white. It's the feldspar glaze. And also what's new is that preceding this period, most of Japan was involved in kind of civil wars, clan wars like that. And they attacked each other's castles, and they destroyed each other's precious collections until there wasn't much left. Most of what the nobles were collecting were Chinese things. But now they needed Japanese things to replace them, and somebody introduced that to them. So now these things are being made by Japanese in Japan. Japan, by the way, the name of that is a European name. The actual name is Nihon, rather, place of the rising sun. The Japanese would call themselves the Yamato. So the Yamato are these people that later are being called Japanese here. And this piece here, this vase here is from Korea. This is not Japanese, and this is of a much earlier period. This Korean vase here is actually 1,000 years old. And so very much of all of this style, actually Buddhism itself came from Korea into Japan. And actually Furuto Uribe, before he started making his own things, would send designs to the Korean potters to make Japanese designs made by Koreans. So there's a lot of Korea actually coming into Japan in this way, so I feel it's appropriate to have a Korean vase along with this collection of the Momoyama period pieces. What I'm going to do now is read a poem. And this poem is a Mary Oliver poem. She's been my standby quite consecutively here. And in this poem, she has named it Night Herons. That is Goiski, the night heron. Some herons were fishing in the robes of the night at a low hour of the water's body. And the fish, I suppose, were full of fish happiness in those transparent inches, even as over and over the beaks jacked down and the narrow bodies were lifted with every quick sally. And that was the end of them, as far as we know. Though, what do we know except that death is so everywhere and so entire? Pummeling and felling, or sometimes, like this, appearing through such a thin door, one stab, and you're through. And what then? Why, then it was almost morning. And one by one, the birds opened their wings and flew. Believe us, they say, it is a serious thing just to be alive on this fresh morning in this broken world. Thank you.